Okay, we're going to discuss movement and movement at the joints as well as the planes and axes of movement that occur in the human body. So to start off with, all of these movement groups are going to be in pairs. So for example, we're going to start off with the extension and flexion. If my arm is out and I flex it in, the angle between my arms are closing. So flexion is the closing of a joint angle, whereas extension is the opening of the joint angle. The next one we're going to look at is abduction and adduction. Abduction is movement away from the medial aspect of the body. So the medial aspect, again, is just the center line of your body. Abduction is going to be movement, watch my arm, movement away, and adduction is movement in. Elevation is movement in a superior direction, and depression is movement in an inferior direction. So if my shoulders go up, that's elevation, and when they go down, that's depression. Pronation is specifically when your forearm rotates towards the medial aspect of your body. So remember your anatomical body position, your palms are facing forward. So pronation is then your palms rotating towards the medial aspect of your body, and then supination is your palms rotating towards the lateral aspect of the body. Inversion and eversion happens in your ankle and your feet. They're kind of similar to pronation and supination. So if this is the sole of my foot, inversion is going to be where the sole of my foot turns towards the medial aspect of the body, and eversion is where the sole of the foot is going to meet the lateral aspect of the body. Okay, the next term specifically, circumduction, is actually a combination of both extension, flexion, abduction, and adduction. And this one really occurs in the ball and socket joints, which is your shoulder and hip joints. So they're able to perform all four of the movements simultaneously, I guess. Opposition and reposition kind of refer to your finger movement. So opposition is using the tips of your fingers to meet your thumb, and then reposition is returning your hand back to its original position. Protraction and retraction is just movement in a posterior and anterior direction. So my shoulders protracting means they're moving forward to the posterior side, which is the front of your body, retraction towards the anterior aspect. Plantar flexion and dorsiflexion are the terms in which your ankle will kind of flex and extend. So if we take my foot here, plantar flexion is the depression of your foot to meet the ground. So for example, if this is my foot and I'm stepping on the ground, that's plantar flexion. Therefore, if I'm doing the opposite and raising my feet up towards to meet my shins, that's dorsiflexion. And then the last one is the arm equivalent of abduction and adduction, which is horizontal flexion and horizontal extension, which is just the same. So horizontal flexion is abduction away, and horizontal flexion is adduction in, and horizontal extension is abduction away. So now to look at the planes and axes of movements, focusing on the planes first. So a plane is kind of like, imagine a pane of glass splitting the human body through a certain way. So the transverse plane runs and it splits along the human midline of the body. So it separates you into your torso into half. Right, so we have your your top half, and then your bottom half. And the that's the transverse plane. The next one, the frontal plane, splits your body into half, starting from your skull, and it goes halfway down, so front and back. It splits your body into the anterior perspective and the posterior perspective. Those are your two sides. And then lastly, the sagittal plane splits you from left to right. So it splits you down the medial aspect of your body, so you end up with a right side of your body and the left side of your body. Okay, and then for each plane, there is an axis that runs through it. For example, the sagittal plane, the sagittal axis will follow where the plane goes. The frontal plane, the frontal axis will follow where the frontal plane goes. And then the transverse plane has the longitudinal axis, not the transverse axis, which is the only one to really be aware of. But when we're talking about rotations and planes of movement, we're really thinking about the pairs that go together. If we imagine a pane of glass separating you, or say there's a piece of glass in front of you, the only way that you could move with all of your body parts touching this pane of glass is to go from side to side, like a cartwheel. This means that you're kind of spinning through your center of rotation through the center, which is your sagittal axis. So therefore the frontal plane is not equivalent to, but it's matched with the sagittal axis. You're only really able to perform rotational type movements from side to side along the sagittal axis. So this means that you can do a side shuffle, you can move alongside this pane of glass in front of you, but you can't walk through it. So all your movement is gonna be touching this glass, and from our earlier pairs of movement, we can see that that would form right with abduction and adduction. Because if I move my arms up and down, they're not going in front of me and they're not passing this piece of glass, which is the frontal plane. Yep. Okay. And then the sagittal plane is paired with the frontal axis. And if we imagine the pane of glass spinning down in the middle, when we are walking along the sagittal plane because we're moving forward and both aspects of the body are sticking to this plane. The sagittal plane is paired with the frontal axis, which means when you're doing a somersault or any rotational type forward movements, you're gonna be hunched around this axis, and you can like kind of form a ball and tuck in over that axis to do that rotational movement. The transverse plane only occurs when you're doing spinning movement in sports such as ice skating or ballet, where it involves the person spinning along the longitudinal axis within the center of the body. So they're gonna keep their torso in line with this plane while they spin their upper body around the longitudinal axis. Yeah, and then those are really just all of the things you need to know about planes and axes of movements, just that the key thing to remember is that all movements must stay in contact with the plane of movement. So then another example I can give is flexion and extension. So if I'm flexing on my arm like this and I'm extending it like that, I can do that while being against the sagittal plane, because if the sagittal plane is here, my arm is staying put and the axis goes through here, and that's how my arm is rotated.